I'm Morgan Reed, and I never thought my own brother would be the architect of my downfall. What started as a simple living arrangement turned into a methodical campaign to erase me from my own life. After being locked out of our shared apartment, with nowhere to go, I discovered something unbelievable. My brother Dean was now interviewing to be my executive assistant at the company I helped build. But this isn't a story about betrayal. It's about reclaiming your power when the people who should love you the most try to steal your identity, your career, and your future. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The rain hammered against my windshield as I pulled into the parking garage of our apartment building. I was exhausted, riding the high of landing the biggest client of my career, Meridian Tech, a $50 million account that would put our marketing firm on the map. I'd been working toward this moment for 3 years, and I couldn't wait to celebrate with Dean. Despite our complicated relationship, he'd been my roommate since college, and I thought he'd be proud. We shared the rent, shared the groceries, even shared the same circle of friends. People always said we looked like twins, though he was 2 years older. Same auburn hair, same hazel eyes, same dimpled smile. But that's where the similarities ended. I took the elevator up to the 14th floor, my heels clicking against the polished concrete as I fumbled for my keys. When I reached for the doorknob, it didn't budge. I tried again, thinking maybe the lock was sticky from the humidity. Nothing. I knocked, assuming Dean might be home early. Silence. I dug through my purse for my phone to call him, but before I could dial, it lit up with a text from an unknown number. Your things are in storage unit 27B. Keys with the front desk. Lease transferred. Sorry it had to be this way. I stared at the screen, my brain refusing to process the words. This had to be a mistake. I called Dean immediately, straight to voicemail. I tried our apartment landline, disconnected. I pounded on the door, causing our neighbor Mrs. Chen to peek out from across the hall. Morgan? I thought you moved out yesterday. Your brother had a whole crew here packing up your things. My stomach dropped as the reality started to sink in. Mrs. Chen, I didn't move out. I was at work. Did Dean say anything to you? She looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. He said you'd had a breakdown at work, that you needed time away from everything. He seemed very concerned. A breakdown? I had just landed the biggest client of my career. My head was spinning as I tried to make sense of it all. I thanked Mrs. Chen and headed back to the elevator, my legs feeling like lead. At the front desk, a sympathetic-looking concierge handed me a small envelope. Mr. Reed said you'd be stopping by. He left this for you. Inside was a single key with a tag labeled 27B, and a handwritten note that simply read, "It's for the best. You'll thank me later." D. The storage facility was 10 miles away, in an industrial area I'd never visited. Unit 27B was at the very back, the metal door already showing signs of rust. When I rolled it open, I found my life packed into cardboard boxes. Clothes, books, photos, even my diploma and awards from work. Everything that made me who I was, compressed and hidden away like some shameful secret. I sat on one of the boxes, trying to steady my breathing. Dean and I had our disagreements, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. We'd grown up in the shadow of our parents' messy divorce, pledging to always look out for each other. When I got the job at Elevate Marketing 3 years ago, it was Dean who had helped me move to the city. He'd been unemployed at the time, so I'd offered to let him move in, splitting the rent once he found work. 6 months in, I'd even referred him for an entry-level position in my company's IT department. I thought I was helping him. My phone buzzed. Again, a calendar notification for tomorrow morning. Quarterly review with Marcus, 9 a.m. Marcus Winters, the CEO of Elevate Marketing and my direct supervisor. The review I'd been preparing for all month, where I planned to present the Meridian acquisition and formally request a promotion to Director of Client Relations. I called my best friend Zoe, praying she'd pick up. On the third ring, she answered. "Morgan? What's up?" "Dean locked me out of our apartment. He's put all my things in storage and told the neighbors I had a mental breakdown." My voice cracked as I fought back tears. There was a long pause. "Morgan, Dean said you've been acting erratic lately. He mentioned you'd been staying with your mom for a while." "My mom lived in Phoenix. I hadn't seen her in 8 months." "Zoe, I've been at work. I just landed at Meridian Tech today. You can ask Marcus. Ask anyone on my team." Another pause. "He showed us texts, Morgan, from your number, saying some really concerning things." Ice spread through my veins. "What texts?" "Listen, maybe we should talk about this in person." "Where are you now?" I gave her the address of the storage facility, and she promised to be there in 30 minutes. While waiting, I paced between the rows of boxes, my mind racing. How had Dean accessed my phone? How had he transferred the lease without my signature? And why? What could possibly be worth destroying our relationship? I began digging through the boxes, looking for my laptop and important documents. My passport was missing, so was my birth certificate. And when I finally found my laptop and powered it on, I discovered the password had been changed. Zoe arrived just as the sky was darkening, bringing with her a cold rush of evening air and an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between concern and suspicion. She handed me a coffee and leaned against her car. "So, what's going on with you and Dean? He's telling everyone at work you're having some kind of episode." I felt like I was in some bizarre alternate reality. "Dean is lying, Zoe. I was at the Meridian pitch this morning. Marcus was there. The whole team was there." She shook her head slowly. "Marcus said you called in sick. Dean went to your place." My coffee slipped from my hand, splashing across the concrete. "That's impossible. I was there. I presented the deck myself." Zoe pulled out her phone and showed me an email. It was the post-meeting summary from Marcus, thanking Dean Reed for stepping in at the last minute and congratulating the team on securing Meridian Tech as a client. "This can't be happening," I whispered, my world tilting on its axis. Why would Dean pretend to be me? And why would Marcus let him? Zoe's expression softened. "Morgan, they look exactly alike on video calls. Dean said you asked him to cover because you weren't feeling well. He had all your notes, your presentation, everything." As the realization dawned on me, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. This wasn't just about an apartment. Dean wasn't just locking me out of my home. He was trying to step into my life, my career, my identity. And, somehow, he'd managed to convince everyone that I was the one who was falling apart. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Zoe offered me her couch for the night, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't sure what to believe. I thanked her but declined. I couldn't bear the thought of spending the night answering questions I didn't have answers to. Instead, I checked into a budget hotel 10 minutes from our office, using my emergency credit card, the one Dean didn't know about. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale cigarettes. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing through every interaction with Dean over the past few months, searching for warning signs I might have missed. There had been small things. Him asking to borrow my laptop more frequently, questioning me about client details that weren't relevant to his IT role, occasional comments about how I always got the opportunities while he did all the technical work. But nothing that hinted at this level of betrayal. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my text messages. There they were, conversations with Zoe, with my team members, even with Marcus, saying things I'd never written. Messages about feeling overwhelmed, about needing time away, about how Dean was helping me manage. Each one subtle enough to seem plausible if you didn't know me well, but completely contrary to my character. The timestamps showed many were sent while I was in meetings. Meetings Dean would have known I was attending because of our shared calendar. My hands shaking, I typed an email to Marcus. Subject: Urgent. Identity concern. Marcus, I need to speak with you immediately regarding this morning's Meridian Tech presentation. Contrary to what you may have been told, I did not call in sick today. I was present and delivered the presentation myself. There appears to be a serious misunderstanding that requires immediate clarification. Please call me as soon as possible. Morgan Reedy hit send, then immediately called the HR department. But at 8:30 p.m., I only reached voicemail. I left a message, explaining the situation as calmly as I could, though my voice trembled with each word. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night poring over every email, every document I could access on my phone, taking screenshots of the fake texts, and making notes of every discrepancy I could find. By morning, my eyes burned and my head pounded, but I had compiled enough evidence to at least raise serious questions about what was happening. I arrived at the office an hour early, dressed in clothes I'd hastily purchased from a 24-hour superstore. Black pants slightly too large, a white blouse with the security tag still attached, the cashier had forgotten to remove it, and my one-day worn heels. I felt disheveled, off balance, exactly how Dean wanted me to appear. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take when he saw me. "Morning, Ms. Reed. Weren't you just—" He trailed off, looking confused. "Just what, Carl?" "Nothing, ma'am. Go on up." My stomach knotted as I stepped into the elevator. Dean had already been here this morning. I checked my watch, 8:05 a.m. The quarterly review wasn't for another hour. What was he doing? When the elevator doors opened to our floor, I immediately spotted Melissa, Marcus's assistant, at her desk. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Morgan? But you just went into the conference room with Marcus." I didn't wait for her to finish. I strode toward the main conference room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus and Dean sitting side by side, looking at something on a laptop. Dean was wearing my navy blue blazer, the one I'd left, hanging in our shared closet, the one that perfectly matched my eyes, that I wore for every important meeting. He'd styled his hair the way I did for presentations, and from behind, in that blazer, with our identical coloring, he could easily pass for me on a video call or from a distance. I pushed open the door without knocking. Both men looked up, startled. "Morgan?" Marcus's brow furrowed in confusion as he looked between Dean and me. "What's going on?" Dean recovered first, his expression shifting to one of practiced concern. "Sis, what are you doing here? We talked about this. You're supposed to be resting." "Don't," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Don't you dare pretend this is about my well-being." I turned to Marcus. "This is Dean, my brother. Not me. He's been impersonating me." Marcus looked bewildered. "I know who Dean is, Morgan. He's been filling in for you while you take some personal time. He told us about your situation. The company is fully supportive of your mental health needs." "My mental health is fine," I said through gritted teeth. "I haven't taken any personal time. I was here yesterday for the Meridian Tech presentation. I've been coming to work every day." Dean stood up, positioning himself between me and Marcus. "I'm sorry about this," he said to Marcus, his voice dripping with practiced sympathy. "The doctors warned us she might respond this way to the new medication. Morgan," he turned to me, "let's talk outside, okay?" I stared at him, at the face so similar to mine yet twisted into an expression of calculating concern that made him a stranger. "No, we're going to talk right here. You locked me out of our apartment. You put my things in storage. You've been sending fake texts from my phone. And now you're trying to take over my job?" Marcus looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation with the HR present." "Excellent idea," I said, not taking my eyes off Dean. "Let's go to HR right now." Dean smiled sadly, the picture of a concerned brother dealing with a difficult situation. Morgan, you know that's not a good idea in your current state. Maybe we should call Dr. Abrams? He turned to Marcus. Her psychiatrist, he explained in a stage whisper. I don't have a psychiatrist. The pitch of my voice rose against my will, making me sound exactly like someone losing control. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to speak calmly. Marcus, I need you to listen to me. Dean is lying. I don't know why, but he's systematically trying to take over my life. I can prove it. Marcus looked between us, clearly uncertain. Dean has been handling the Meridian account quite well in your absence, he said carefully. In fact, we were just discussing his role moving forward. My blood ran cold. His role? That's my account. I brought in Meridian. Dean placed a hand on my shoulder, which I immediately shrugged off. Morgan, we've talked about this. You've been under so much pressure lately. That's why you agreed to let me help with your workload, remember? To reduce your stress while you focus on your recovery. I could see doubt creeping into Marcus's expression. Dean was good, better than I'd ever given him credit for. Every word, every gesture was perfectly calibrated to make me look unstable and him look like the supportive brother stepping up in a crisis. I reached for my phone. I have proof. I can show you. But when I unlocked my screen, the screenshots I'd taken overnight were gone. My gallery was empty except for a few generic photos of landscapes. My email drafts folder showed no record of my message to Marcus. Dean's expression was a perfect blend of concern and resignation. See what I mean? These episodes are getting more frequent. I stood there, clutching my useless phone, watching, as the life I'd built slipped further from my grasp. HR was a disaster. Lynette Barnes, our head of human resources, sat across from me in her sterile office, her expression a careful mask of professional concern. Dean sat beside me, occasionally, reaching over to pat my hand in a show of brotherly support that made my skin crawl. Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. Morgan, Lynette began, her voice measured. I understand you're going through a difficult time. The company is committed to supporting your well-being during this period. I'm not going through anything, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. My brother has systematically inserted himself into my position and is attempting to take over my accounts. Lynette exchanged a glance with Dean, who shook his head slightly. Morgan, she continued, we have emails from you from the past 3 weeks indicating you needed to step back from your responsibilities temporarily. You specifically requested that Dean handle your accounts in your absence. I never sent those emails, I insisted. Dean has access to our apartment, my laptop, and apparently my phone. He's been impersonating me. Lynette slid a folder across the desk. These are copies of the emails in question. They came from your company account, at times when you were not in the office according to security logs. I flipped through the pages, my stomach sinking with each fabricated message. There were dozens, dating back nearly a month, each more convincing than the last. The gradual progression was brilliant, starting with subtle mentions of stress, building to concerned self-reflection, and culminating in a formal request for Dean to temporarily take over my responsibilities. I didn't write any of these. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Morgan, Marcus interjected gently. Dean's been doing an excellent job with Meridian. The client specifically praised your handover notes and how seamless the transition has been. I stared at him in disbelief. There was no handover because I never stepped away. I've been coming to work every day. I secured the Meridian account myself. Then why don't any of the security logs show you entering the building? Lynette asked, tapping a printed sheet showing entrance and exit records. My breath caught. What? She slid another document across the desk. Security logs for the past 3 weeks. According to the records, I hadn't entered the building since April 30th, nearly 3 weeks ago. That's impossible, I whispered. I've been here every day. Dean sighed heavily. Morgan used my ID badge several times, he explained to Lynette. When she first started experiencing difficulties, she sometimes forgot her own. I let her use mine until HR could issue a replacement. That might explain some of the confusion. The perfect explanation for any discrepancies. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing a familiar face. How long had he been planning this? May I speak with Morgan alone? Lynette asked, glancing at Dean and Marcus. After they left, she leaned forward. Morgan, is there someone I can call for you? A friend? A family member? My life is being stolen from me, I said quietly. And you're asking if there's someone you can call? Her expression softened. I understand this feels very real to you, but it is real. I pulled out my phone, hoping against hope that some evidence remained. Look, my text messages have been tampered with. The screenshots I took last night are gone. Lynette's smile was gentle but patronizing. Technology can be confusing when we're under stress. Morgan, Dean has shared with us that you've been experiencing some episodes lately. The company is prepared to provide you with paid leave and resources to help you through this time. I looked down at my hands, suddenly aware of how I must appear, disheveled, sleep-deprived, making wild accusations without proof, the perfect picture of someone in crisis. I'd like to see my personnel file, I said finally. Lynette hesitated. That might not be... I have a right to see it. She nodded reluctantly and pulled up my file on her computer, turning the screen so I could see. What I saw made my blood run cold. Under emergency contacts, my mother's name and number had been replaced with Dean's. My home address had been changed to a location I didn't recognize. And most damning of all, there was a note dated 2 weeks ago. Employee has requested temporary reassignment of duties due to personal health concerns. Family member, brother Dean Reed, designated as temporary replacement with employee's written consent. Attached was a scanned letter with my signature, or what appeared to be my signature. I stared at it, recognizing the subtle differences only someone intimately familiar with my handwriting would notice. The M in Morgan was too angular, the loop in the G too wide. This isn't my signature, I said, pointing to the document. Look, compare it to earlier documents in my file. Lynette seemed hesitant but pulled up an earlier performance review I'd signed. She examined both signatures, her brow furrowing slightly. There are some differences, she admitted, but signatures can vary, especially during periods of stress. Mine doesn't, I countered. I sign the same way every time. It's a matter of record. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She glanced at the door where Dean waited outside, then back at me. Morgan, she said carefully, if what you're saying is true, it would constitute a serious case of identity fraud and corporate espionage. These are very serious allegations against your brother. I know exactly how serious this is, I replied. That's why I'm here. She studied me for a long moment, then closed my file. I'll look into this further. In the meantime, I think it would be best if you took some time away from the office. So you're suspending me. We're providing you with paid leave while we investigate. It's standard procedure. And Dean? Will continue in his current capacity until we complete our review. I felt the air leave my lungs. You're giving him exactly what he wants. Lynette's expression was professionally sympathetic, but unmoved. We'll be in touch, Morgan. Is there somewhere you're staying, since you mentioned issues with your apartment? I almost laughed at the absurdity. The Sundown Motel on 7th, room 118. As I stood to leave, she added, For what it's worth, I hope you're wrong about your brother. Family is precious. In the hallway, Dean was waiting, his posture relaxed, confident. When he saw me, his expression shifted instantly to one of practiced concern. How did it go? He asked, as if he genuinely cared. I stepped close to him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. I don't know why you're doing this, but I'm not going to let you take my life. His eyes met mine, and for an instant, the mask slipped. I'm not taking your life, Morgan, he said softly. I'm taking what should have been mine all along. I returned to my motel room to find the door ajar. Fear spiked through me as I cautiously pushed it open. The room had been ransacked, drawers emptied onto the floor, bed linen stripped. Even the cheap landscape painting above the bed had been removed from its hook. My laptop was gone, along with the folder containing my hastily gathered evidence. Excuse me. I whirled around to find a middle-aged man in a sundown motel uniform standing in the doorway. This room is scheduled for deep cleaning. All personal items were supposed to be removed by noon. This is my room, I stammered. I checked in last night. He frowned, consulting a clipboard. According to our records, the guest in 118 checked out this morning around 9 a.m. That's impossible. I was at my office. Someone turned in the key, he insisted. Signed the checkout form too. He showed me the paper, and there it was. Morgan Reed, scrawled in handwriting similar to mine, but with those same telltale differences I'd noticed on the HR documents. That's not my signature, I said, my voice hollow with disbelief. The manager's expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. Ma'am, if you're not a registered guest, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Where are my things? Any abandoned items would have been collected by housekeeping. You can check with lost and found, but... He trailed off, looking pointedly at the emptied room. I had nothing. No computer, no evidence, no change of clothes, not even a toothbrush. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stepped back into the parking lot. Dean was methodically erasing every trace of my existence. I walked 2 blocks to a small coffee shop, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and huddled in a corner booth. With shaking hands, I checked my bank account on my phone. My stomach dropped. The balance showed 47.22s. Last time I'd checked, there had been over $3,000, not a fortune, but enough to survive on while I figured things out. I called the bank, navigating through automated menus until I finally reached a customer service representative. I need to report unauthorized withdrawals from my account, I explained. After verifying my identity, which took 3 attempts because I kept stumbling over security questions that seemed to have been changed, the representative reviewed my recent transactions. I'm showing a wire transfer of $2,950 to a joint account at First Meridian Bank on Tuesday at 10:18 a.m., she said. I never authorized that transfer, I insisted. I was in a client meeting at that time. The transfer was authorized through our mobile app using your credentials and the security token, she explained with the patience of someone who'd had this conversation many times before. It also appears the transfer was to an account where you're listed as a joint owner. I closed my eyes, the pieces falling into place. Dean had set up a joint account I knew nothing about, probably using the same forged signatures he'd used on the HR documents. I need to freeze my account, I said. I can do that, she replied. But you should know that a change of address was processed for this account yesterday. All new cards and correspondence will go to... She paused. 1122 Westbrook Avenue, apartment 301. The address I hadn't recognized in my HR file, where Dean had apparently moved both of us on paper. That's not my address, I said, my voice barely audible. After hanging up, I sat in the coffee shop, watching people come and go, their normal lives continuing while mine disintegrated. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Hey, heard what happened at the office today. Here if you want to talk. I stared at the message, wondering if it was a lifeline or another trap. I decided to take the risk. Can we meet? I need help. Dean has taken everything. My apartment, my job, even my motel room and laptop. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, I'm at the office until 6. Meet me at Riverside Park after? By the fountain? The park was public, open, and safe. I texted back my agreement and spent the next 4 hours in the coffee shop, nursing my drink and planning what to say to convince at least one person that I wasn't experiencing a mental breakdown. Riverside. Park was quiet in the early evening, just a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the mild weather. I found a bench near the fountain and waited, watching the water catch the golden hour light. When Zoe appeared, she wasn't alone. 2 men I didn't recognize hung back at a discreet distance. "Who are they?" I asked as she sat beside me. "Just friends," she said vaguely. "Morgan, I'm worried about you." "You should be," I said. "But not because I'm having a breakdown, because my brother is systematically stealing my identity." She sighed, her expression pained. "Dean told me you might say that." "Of course he did." I laughed bitterly. "He's thought of everything." "He showed me the medical reports, Morgan, from Dr. Abrams." "There is no Dr. Abrams," I insisted. "Dean made him up." She pulled out her phone, showing me a website for Benjamin. Abrams, MD, psychiatry. It looked legitimate. Professional photo, credentials, office address. "He's real, Morgan. And he's concerned about your recent episodes." My head spun. How deep did this go? "Zoe, think about it. You've known me for 3 years. Have I ever shown any signs of mental instability?" "You've been under a lot of pressure," she said gently. "The Meridian account, your mom's health issues." "My mom's fine," I interrupted. "She's in Phoenix with her new husband, posting pictures of their garden on Instagram every other day." Zoe looked confused. "But you told me last month she was in the hospital. You were so upset, you could barely talk about it." Another fabrication. Another thread in Dean's elaborate tapestry of lies. "Listen to me carefully," I said, leaning closer. "Dean has orchestrated all of this. He's impersonating me at work. He's forged documents. He's even cleaned out my bank account. I need your help to prove it." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Her tone had shifted, more cautious now. "I need access to my email, my files at work. There has to be evidence of when the real me was working versus when Dean was pretending to be me." She was quiet for a long moment. "What if I spoke to Dean? Maybe the 3 of us could—" "No," I cut her off. "Dean can't know I've talked to you." Her eyes flicked to the men waiting at a distance, then back to me. "Morgan, we've arranged for you to get some help." Her voice was softer now, apologetic. My stomach dropped as I realized what was happening. "You're having me committed." "It's just a 3-day evaluation," she explained, reaching for my hand. "Dean's already handled the paperwork. It's a really nice facility, private, discreet." I pulled away from her touch, rising to my feet. "I'm not going to any facility." "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be," she pleaded, nodding slightly to the men who began walking toward us. "Dr. Abrams will be there. You can tell him everything." I backed away, my heart hammering. "Zoe, you're making a terrible mistake." "Morgan, please." She stood, reaching for me. "We just want to help you." "If you want to help me, call the police. Tell them my identity has been stolen." I turned and ran, adrenaline surging through my veins. Behind me, I heard one of the men curse, followed by the sound of footsteps. They were following me, but I knew this park. I'd spent countless lunch breaks here, exploring its winding paths and hidden corners. I cut through a grove of trees, ducked behind the amphitheater, and doubled back along the river path, finally losing my pursuers near the east entrance. Breathless, I emerged onto a busy street, blending into the evening crowd. My phone buzzed. In my pocket, Zoe calling. I ignored it, then shut the phone off completely. It wasn't safe anymore. Nothing was safe. As darkness fell, the reality of my situation sank in. I had no home, no money, and now no friends. Dean hadn't just stolen my identity. He'd weaponized my entire support system against me. Every person I might have turned to for help now believed I was experiencing a psychotic break. I found myself outside a 24-hour diner, drawn by the warm light and the promise of shelter. With my last few dollars, I ordered coffee and toast, then asked the waitress if I could charge my phone behind the counter. Battery died at the worst time, I explained with a forced smile. Waiting for an important call. She shrugged and plugged it in behind the register, out of my reach. Smart girl. As I waited, I noticed a local newspaper left behind by another customer. The business section featured a familiar face, Marcus Winters, announcing Elevate Marketing's new partnership with Meridian Tech. And there, standing just behind him in the photo, was Dean. My blazer, my hairstyle, positioned exactly where I should have been. Dawn found me huddled in a corner booth of the diner, stiff from sitting upright. All night, clutching a coffee cup that had been empty for hours. The morning waitress, Darlene according to her name tag, had taken pity on me, quietly refilling my cup without asking for payment. She slid a plate of scrambled eggs across the table. "On the house," she said simply. "You look like you could use it." I thanked her, my voice cracking from exhaustion and emotion. As I ate, I assessed my situation with brutal clarity. Dean had methodically removed every safety net I had: home, money, friends, credibility. I needed to start rebuilding, but where? How do you prove you're you when someone else has all your documentation and the trust of everyone who knows you? My phone, which I'd retrieved from the night waitress, was nearly dead again. But I had enough battery to search for identity theft resources. Most sites recommended filing a police report immediately. With nothing to lose, I walked 6 blocks to the nearest precinct. The officer at the front desk looked bored as I explained my situation. He slid a form across the counter. "Fill this out," he said flatly. "Someone will contact you." "When?" I asked. He shrugged. "We're understaffed. Identity theft isn't exactly priority 1. "This isn't just identity theft," I insisted. "My brother is systematically taking over my life, my job, my apartment, my bank accounts. He's even trying to have me involuntarily committed." That caught his attention. "Committed? Do you have documentation of this attempt?" I deflated slightly. "No, the paperwork is with him," the officer sighed. "Look, fill out the form, provide any evidence you have, and we'll look into it. But without documentation, it's your word against his." I completed the form as thoroughly as possible, detailing every action Dean had taken that I could remember. Under supporting evidence, I wrote only, "All evidence is currently in possession of the perpetrator." When I slid the form back, the officer glanced at it and frowned. "You're staying at the Sundown Motel?" I was. "I've been displaced." "Current address?" I hesitated. "I don't have one at the moment." He studied me more carefully now, taking in my disheveled appearance and day-old clothes. "So you're homeless." The word hit me like a physical blow. Homeless. 24 hours ago, I'd been a successful marketing executive with an apartment, a career, and a future. Now I was filling out a police report with no address to my name. "Temporarily," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. "Until this is resolved." He handed me a carbon copy of the report. "We'll be in touch if we need more information. You might want to check out the Harmony House shelter on 9th. They take women in crisis." I took the form, mumbled a thank you, and left with what little dignity I could muster. Outside, I checked my phone battery, 7%, and made a decision. There was one person who might believe me. One person Dean couldn't have reached yet. My mother. We hadn't been close since my parents' divorce 10 years ago. She'd remarried and moved to Phoenix, and our contact had dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and occasional texts. But she knew me, really knew me, in a way Dean couldn't fake. I found a library 3 blocks away and rushed in just as my phone died. The librarian allowed me to use a public computer, and I logged into my rarely used email account, the old one from college that Dean wouldn't know about. "Mom, I'm in serious trouble. Dean has stolen my identity, taken over my job, and locked me out of my apartment. He's convinced everyone I work with that I'm having a mental breakdown. I have no money, no place to stay, and no one believes me. Please, call me at this number as soon as you can. My phone number. I need someone who knows the real me. Love, Morgan." I hit send, then on impulse, searched for Dr. Benjamin Abrams, psychiatrist. Several results appeared, including the professional website Zoe had shown me. I clicked through the pages. It looked legitimate, with credentials, publications, patient testimonials. But something felt off. I tried a different search. How to verify medical license. Following the instructions, I searched the State Medical Board database for Benjamin Abrams. No results. A surge of vindication rushed through me. I searched for recent domain registrations for drabrampsychiatry.com, and there it was, registered 3 weeks ago through a privacy service. The site was a fake, created specifically to support Dean's narrative. I printed the domain registration information and medical board search results, then used my remaining library time to create a new email account with a complex password Dean couldn't guess. I forwarded the evidence to this new account, along with an email to myself documenting everything that had happened so far, with timestamps and specific details only I would know. As I left the library, I noticed a familiar coffee shop across the street, Meridian Coffee, owned by the same parent company as Meridian Tech, my biggest client. An idea began to form. I knew Meridian's CEO, Victoria Patel, had been impressed with my pitch. She'd specifically mentioned my presentation style and attention to detail as reasons for choosing Elevate Marketing. What if I could reach Victoria directly? If she realized Dean wasn't the person who'd pitched her company, it could unravel his entire facade. I crossed the street and entered the coffee shop, borrowing a charger from the barista and ordering the cheapest item on the menu to justify occupying a table. While my phone charged, I scribbled notes on napkins, planning my approach. Within an hour, my phone had enough charge to function. I had 1 missed call, my mother, and a text message. "Morgan, I just spoke with Dean. He told me everything. He's worried sick about you. Please go back to the clinic and let them help you. I love you." My heart sank. Dean had anticipated my move and intercepted it. He must have been monitoring my mother's calls or emails. I didn't bother responding. What was the point? She'd already chosen what to believe. Instead, I focused on my new plan. Through LinkedIn, I found Victoria Patel's executive assistant, Emily Chen. Rather than contacting Victoria directly, which would likely be flagged or ignored, I composed a carefully worded email to Emily. Subject: Urgent clarification needed Meridian Elevate Contract Ms. Chen, we met briefly during the Meridian Tech pitch last month. I'm reaching out regarding an urgent matter that requires Ms. Patel's attention concerning the recent agreement with Elevate Marketing. There appears to be a case of misrepresentation that may impact the terms of your contract. I have documentation that the person currently serving as your account manager is not the same individual who developed and presented the proposal your company accepted. I would appreciate 15 minutes of Ms. Patel's time to discuss this matter privately. This is sensitive and potentially has legal implications for both Meridian and Elevate. Sincerely, Morgan Reed, former Director of Client Relations, Elevate Marketing. I hit send, then immediately followed up with a LinkedIn connection request to Emily, hoping the double notification would catch her attention. It was a long shot, but it was the most direct path to someone who could verify my identity based on actual interaction, not paperwork Dean could forge. While waiting for a response, I walked to a nearby bank branch. If Dean had created a joint account using my identity, there might be surveillance footage of him making transactions in my name. I approached a sympathetic-looking bank officer and explained my situation. I believe someone has created fraudulent accounts in my name, I said. I'd like to check if my identity has been used to open any accounts at this bank. The officer, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, looked concerned. Do you have identification? I hesitated. My wallet was stolen. That's part of the problem. She frowned. Without ID, there's very little I can do. Bank privacy regulations. I understand, I interrupted. But this is identity theft. If there are accounts in my name, they're fraudulent. You could file a police report, she suggested. Already done, I assured her. But the investigation will take time, and meanwhile, this person has access to finances in my name. Patricia seemed to consider this. There is one thing we could do. If you believe a specific account was created fraudulently, you can provide the account number, and we can flag it for investigation. The joint account number. I needed the account number Dean had transferred my money to. Could you check my transaction? History, I asked. I had a legitimate account here that shows a transfer to the fraudulent account. She hesitated. Again, without ID, please, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I'm not asking to withdraw money or access any accounts. I just need to stop someone from destroying my life. Something in my expression must have reached her. She motioned me to a private office, closed the door, and spoke quietly. I can't access your accounts without proper identification, she said firmly. However, if you've filed a police report for identity theft, you can request that the detective assigned to your case subpoena bank records. That's the proper channel. She slid a business card across the desk. Ask for John in our fraud department. Tell him Patricia sent you and that it's a potential case of synthetic identity theft. He'll know what documentation the police will need. It wasn't much, but it was something. A tiny crack in the wall Dean had built around me. I thanked her and left, clutching the card like a lifeline. Outside, my phone pinged with an email notification. Not from Emily Chen, but from an address I didn't recognize. I received your message. Meet me at Meridian Coffee on 8th Street tomorrow, at 9 a.m. Come alone and be discreet. No signature, no explanation. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. Someone was listening. Someone was willing to hear my side. I just had to survive one more night. I spent the night in an all-night laundromat, dozing fitfully on a hard plastic chair, while the rhythmic tumble of dryers created white noise. The elderly attendant left, me alone, perhaps recognizing desperation when she saw it. By morning, I was stiff and gritty-eyes but determined. I used the laundromat sink to wash my face and smooth my hair, trying to look somewhat presentable for my meeting. Meridian Coffee was bustling with morning commuters when I arrived at 8:45. I ordered a small coffee, draining the last of my cash, and found a table in the corner with a clear view of the door. Every time the bell above the entrance jingled, my heart leaped, only to sink when another stranger walked in. At 9:05, my phone buzzed with a new email from the same anonymous account. I see you're already here. Corner table, white blouse, red tote bag. I'm at the counter in the gray suit. I scanned the customers at the counter and spotted a woman in her early 40s, elegant in a tailored gray pantsuit, her dark hair cut in a sleek bob. She wasn't looking my way, but as I watched, she picked up her coffee and walked directly to my table. "Morgan Reed?" she asked quietly, taking the seat across from me without waiting for confirmation. "Yes," I replied, studying her face for any hint of recognition. "And you are?" "Kendra Jenkins. I work for Meridian Tech's legal department." She placed a slim leather portfolio on the table between us. "Ms. Patel asked me to meet with you regarding your unusual claims." My pulse quickened. "Thank you for coming. I know how this must sound." She held up a hand, stopping me. "Before we continue, I need to be clear about something. Meridian has invested significantly in our relationship with Elevate Marketing. If your allegations are unfounded, it could constitute interference with a business contract. I understand, I said carefully, but they're not unfounded. My brother has been impersonating me, taking over my accounts at work, and has convinced my colleagues I'm experiencing some kind of breakdown. Kendra's expression remained neutral. That's quite an accusation. Do you have any evidence? I hesitated. Most of my documentation has been taken, but I can prove I'm the real Morgan Reed who pitched your company, not my brother. How? Ask me anything about the presentation. Details Dean wouldn't know, even if he had my notes. She regarded me for a long moment, then opened her portfolio and removed several photographs. These were taken during the initial pitch meeting, she explained, spreading them on the table. The images showed the Meridian boardroom from various angles. In one, I could see myself at the front of the room, gesturing toward a slide about market penetration strategies. In another, Victoria Patel was asking a question, her expression intense. "This is me," I said, pointing to myself in the photos. I was there. "Perhaps," Kendra conceded, "but these don't prove your claims about your brother." "What about this?" During the Q&A, Victoria asked about our contingency plan for the Asian market expansion if the regulatory environment changed. I answered that we'd prepared 3 alternative approaches, including a partnership with local firms that already had compliance infrastructure in place. Kendra's expression shifted slightly. "Go on." And when CFO Raymond Wong questioned our projected ROI timeline, I offered to adjust the implementation schedule to prioritize the highest yield markets first, even though it wasn't in our original proposal. Something in Kendra's eyes changed. Recognition, maybe even belief. "One more thing," I added. After the formal presentation, in the hallway, Victoria mentioned her daughter was applying to Westfield University, my alma mater. I told her about Professor Martinez in the business ethics department, who had been my mentor. Kendra closed her portfolio deliberately. "Ms. Patel remembered that conversation. It's why she agreed to have me meet you." She leaned forward slightly. "The person handling our account now, your brother, as you claim, couldn't have known those details." Relief flooded through me. "Then you believe me?" "I believe there's a discrepancy that warrants investigation," she said carefully. "The person currently managing our account is not the same person who gave the presentation. His name is Dean Reed. He's my brother. We look similar enough that in photographs or video calls, people might confuse us. But in person, the differences are obvious." Kendra nodded thoughtfully. Ms. Patel noticed something was off in their follow-up meeting this week. The presentation style, the mannerisms, even the level of familiarity with certain aspects of the proposal. They were different. Hope surged within me. Finally, someone who could see through Dean's deception. "What happens now?" I asked. "Meridian needs to protect its interests," Kendra replied. "If there's been misrepresentation by Elevate, we need to address it." "But," she added, her tone softening slightly, "Ms. Patel was impressed with your original work. She'd like to know what's really happening." I started to explain, but Kendra's attention had shifted to something over my shoulder. Her eyes widened slightly. "Don't turn around," she murmured. But someone just came in who seemed very interested in our conversation. My stomach dropped. Man or woman? Man. Early 30s. Auburn hair. He's on his phone, but he's watching us. Dean. He must have been monitoring my email somehow, or perhaps he'd been tracking my phone. Either way, he'd found me. "I need to go," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the panic building inside me. Kendra nodded, understanding immediately. "Go to the restroom. There's a service exit through the kitchen. I'll distract him." I stood casually, as if merely stepping away for a moment, and walked toward the back of the coffee shop. Through the reflection in a decorative mirror, I caught a glimpse of Dean, wearing one of my blazers again, his hair styled like mine. The sight of him wearing my identity like a costume made my skin crawl. The kitchen staff looked surprised as I pushed through the swinging doors, but I flashed a confident smile and gestured toward the rear exit. Meeting running long, shortcut to my next appointment. Before anyone could question me, I was out the back door and into an alley behind. The coffee shop. I ran 2 blocks before slowing to catch my breath, ducking into a small bookstore to regroup. My phone buzzed with a new email from Kendra. He approached me after you left, claimed to be Dean Reed, your brother, concerned about your mental health. Episode. Said you've been creating conspiracy theories about identity theft. Very convincing act. He even had business cards from Elevate listing him as Director of Client Relations. I played along but made no commitments. Contact me securely when you can. I exhaled slowly. Kendra hadn't fallen for Dean's act completely, but his appearance had complicated things. He was escalating, actively hunting me now. And somehow, he knew about my meeting. I checked my phone settings and discovered location services were still enabled. Dean could have been tracking me through my Google account, which we'd once shared for family planning purposes. I turned off all location services and removed all shared accounts, but the damage was done. He knew I was reaching out to Meridian. As I was about to leave the bookstore, a breaking news alert flashed across my phone. Fraud alert. Police warn of woman impersonating Elevate marketing executive, attempting to contact company clients. Suspect. Described as early 30s, auburn hair, may identify herself as Morgan Reed. Authorities advise caution and to report any contact. My breath caught in my throat. A photo accompanied the alert, a screenshot from the coffee shop's security camera, taken minutes ago, showing me talking with Kendra. The caption read, "Suspect attempting to defraud local businesses." Dean had gone to the police. He'd reported me for impersonating myself. I ducked further into the bookstore as my phone began ringing. Kendra calling. I answered hesitantly. "Have you seen the news?" she asked without preamble. "Yes," I whispered. "It's not true. Dean's turned everything upside down." "I suspected as much," she replied. "This is too coordinated to be spontaneous. Morgan, this goes beyond sibling rivalry or identity theft. Your brother is methodically destroying your professional reputation. What do I do? The police are looking for me now." She was quiet for a moment. "You need legal representation immediately. This has escalated beyond what Meridian can involve itself in directly." "I don't have money for a lawyer," I reminded her. "Dean's taken everything. I have a colleague, someone who doesn't work for Meridian but whom I trust completely. Her name is Alicia Ramos. Pro bono work, specializes in identity theft cases. I'm texting you her contact information." "Thank you," I said, relief washing through me. "You have no idea." "Don't thank me yet," Kendra interrupted. "Professionally, I need to inform Meridian about this situation. We may need to pause our work with Elevate until this is resolved." "I understand. One more thing. Whatever you do, don't go back to your workplace or try to contact your colleagues directly. Based on this news alert, your brother has significant influence there. If you're arrested, it becomes much harder to fight these allegations." After we hung up, I sat in the bookstore, surrounded by other people's stories while my own unraveled around me. My phone buzzed with Kendra's text containing Alicia's information, followed immediately by a call from an unknown number. "Morgan Reed?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes. This is Alicia Ramos. Kendra briefed me on your situation. I'd like to help, but we need to move quickly. Where are you now?" I gave her the bookstore's address, and she promised to meet me in 20 minutes. While waiting, I browsed through my email, looking for any communication from the police regarding my identity theft report. Nothing. Instead, I found something far worse, an email from Lynette Barnes in HR, sent to my personal account. Subject: Termination of employment. Confidential M's. Read: This letter serves as formal notice of the termination of your employment with Elevate Marketing, effective immediately, due to 1. Unauthorized contact with company clients. 2. Misrepresentation of company position. 3. Violation of company. Confidentiality policies. 4. Suspected fraudulent activity. All company property must be returned within 24 hours. Final paycheck will be withheld pending investigation. Lynette Barnes, Human Resources Director, Elevate Marketing. Attached was a formal termination letter with my forged signature acknowledging receipt, dated 2 weeks ago. Dean hadn't just stolen my job. He'd made it look like I'd already been fired before any of this began. I was still staring at the termination letter when a tall woman with dark curly hair approached my table in the bookstore. She wore jeans, a blazer, and an expression of practiced calm that I imagined served her well in courtrooms. "Morgan?" she asked quietly, sliding into the seat across from me. I nodded, and she continued. "Alicia Ramos. I'd shake your hand, but I think we should keep interactions low-key. There's a police car parked down the block." My pulse spiked. "Are they looking for me?" "Let's assume yes." She glanced at my phone. "First thing, turn that off. Completely off. Not just sleep mode. If they're serious about finding you, they can ping your location." I powered down the phone immediately. "Good. Now, I need you to tell me everything, starting from the beginning, the condensed version. We don't have much time." In terse sentences, I laid out the past few days: the locked apartment, the storage unit, the forged emails, the HR meeting, the attempts to have me committed, and now the police report. Alicia took notes in a small notebook, her expression giving nothing away. "Do you have any independent documentation?" she asked when I finished. Anything Dean couldn't have accessed or altered? I thought for a moment. The domain registration for the fake psychiatrist website. I printed it at the library. I pulled the folded papers from my pocket, and the medical board search showed no Dr. Benjamin Abrams. She examined them carefully. "It's a start. Not enough to prove your case, but enough to raise questions." She tapped her pen against her notebook. "Here's our immediate problem. You've been reported to the police for fraud and identity theft. Ironically, your brother is accusing you of the very thing he's doing to you. How is that possible? I'm me." Identity isn't just who you are, it's who you can prove you are. Right now, Dean has all your documentation, your workspace, your digital accounts, and apparently the trust of your colleagues. You have, she gestured at me, yourself. And in legal terms, that's not enough. The harsh reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on surviving each day, on finding just one person who would believe me, that I hadn't fully processed the magnitude of what Dean had accomplished. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice small even to my own ears. "First, we need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere Dean wouldn't think to look." Alicia checked her watch. "Then we need to start building a counter-narrative with actual evidence." "I can't afford a hotel," I reminded her. "Dean cleared out my bank accounts. I have a friend who runs a women's shelter. It's not the Ritz, but it's secure. They're used to protecting women from dangerous men. And in this case, that's exactly what your brother is." She made a quick call, speaking in low tones. After hanging up, she scribbled an address on a piece of paper. "Go there, ask for Maria. Tell her Alicia sent you. She'll get you settled. Don't use your real name with anyone but her." "What about you? What will you be doing?" "I'm going to file an emergency injunction to freeze any actions against you while we prepare your case. Then I'll start the formal process of documenting the identity theft. We need to move fast before Dean can do any more damage." She handed me $60 in cash. "For transportation and essentials. I'll meet you at the shelter tomorrow morning at 9. The shelter was in a converted warehouse in an industrial part of town, nondescript from the outside, but surprisingly warm within. Maria, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, showed me to a small private room with a twin bed, a dresser, and a shared bathroom down the hall. "It's not much," she said, "but you'll be safe here. We have security protocols, and no one comes in or out without identification and clearance." "Thank you," I said, fighting back unexpected tears. After days of constant vulnerability, the promise of safety, even temporary safety, was overwhelming. "Alicia tells me you're in a unique situation," Maria continued. "I don't need to know the details, but is there anything specific I should be aware of?" I hesitated, trying to decide how much to share. "My brother might come looking for me. He's very convincing. He might claim to be concerned about my mental health." Maria's expression hardened slightly. "We've heard that one before. Don't worry. No. One sees our residents without prior approval, regardless of how concerned they claim to be." That night, I slept in an actual bed for the first time in days. The shelter was quiet, with only the occasional sound of footsteps in the hallway or murmured conversations in distant rooms. I should have felt relieved, but as the adrenaline of constant crisis began to ebb, a deeper emotion took its place. A profound, aching grief. I'd lost everything. My home, my career, my reputation, my friends, even my mother believed Dean over me. The life I'd carefully built over years had been systematically dismantled in a matter of days. And for what? What could Dean possibly gain that would be worth destroying me so completely? The question circled in my mind as I drifted into uneasy sleep, only to be awakened hours later by Maria gently shaking my shoulder. "Morgan," she whispered urgently, "you need to get up. Now." I blinked in confusion. The room was still dark, the digital clock beside the bed reading 3:17 a.m. "What's happening?" "Police are here," she said grimly. "They have a warrant." "For me?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "They're looking for someone matching your description. They won't give a name, which is unusual. We're stalling, but you need to go." "Where?" "How?" "Back exit through the kitchen. One of our volunteers will drive you. Grab your things, quickly." Moving on autopilot, I stuffed my few belongings into a plastic bag Maria handed me. She led me down a service stairwell and through a series of hallways to a small industrial kitchen where a young woman in a university sweatshirt was waiting. "This is Jen," Maria explained. "She'll get you somewhere safe." "But what about—" "Alicia knows. She's the one who called to warn us." Maria pressed a burner phone into my hand. "Take this. Alicia's number is programmed in. She'll contact you when it's safe." Before I could thank her, I hurried out a back door and into a waiting car. Jen drove in silence for several minutes, taking a complex route through side streets and industrial areas. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "My aunt's place," she replied, checking the rearview mirror. "She's out of town for a month, Alicia. Said you need somewhere completely off the grid." We arrived at a modest bungalow in an older neighborhood. Jen unlocked the door and gave me a quick tour. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, the Wi-Fi password scrawled on a sticky note on the fridge. "There's food in the pantry," she said. "Don't use the landline and keep the lights off in the front of the house. Alicia will be in touch tomorrow." After she left, I stood in the silent house, trying to process what had just happened. The police had come for me in the middle of the night with a warrant. This wasn't just Dean spreading rumors anymore. This was legal action, official charges. What had he told them? What evidence had he manufactured? I checked the burner phone. No messages yet. With nothing else to do, I opened my plastic bag of belongings and pulled out the termination letter I'd received earlier. Reading it again, something caught my eye that I'd missed before. In the list of reasons for termination, number 4 was suspected fraudulent activity. What activity? What was Dean accusing me of? Unable to sleep, I searched the house and found a pad of paper in a kitchen drawer. I began writing down everything I could remember: dates, times, names, every detail of Dean's campaign against me. If this were to become a legal battle, I needed my version of events documented while the memories were still fresh. As dawn broke, I was still writing. Pages of notes spread across the kitchen table. The burner phone rang, startling me. "Morgan?" Alicia's voice. "Are you safe?" "Yes," I replied. "What's happening? Why were the police at the shelter?" "Dean has escalated things significantly," she said, her voice tight. "There's a warrant for your arrest." The room seemed to tilt around me. "For what?" "Embezzlement from Elevate Marketing. Nearly $200,000 missing from client accounts, all tied to your department. Dean has provided documentation showing you transferred the funds. The transactions date back several months." "That's impossible," I gasped. "I never touched client funds. That's not even part of my job function." "According to the paperwork Dean supplied, it was. He's changed your job description retroactively, given himself an alibi for those time periods, and provided bank records showing the money flowing into accounts in your name." I sank into a chair, my legs no longer able to support me. "He planned this for months, didn't he? This isn't impulsive. This isn't even about taking my job. He's been setting me up to take a fall for something he did." "It seems that way," Alicia agreed grimly. "The good news is, if he's been planning this long term, he's made mistakes. Nobody crafts a perfect fraud. There are always inconsistencies. We just need to find them. And until then? Until then, you need to stay hidden. If you're arrested, Dean wins. The case becomes much harder to fight from behind bars." After hanging up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, watching the morning light creep across the floor. I'd hit my breaking point. I was no longer just fighting to reclaim my identity. I was fighting to stay out of prison for crimes Dean had likely committed himself. The question that had haunted me in the shelter returned with new urgency. What could possibly be worth destroying me so completely? The answer was becoming clear: $200,000, and the need for someone else to blame when it was discovered missing. By midday, I'd filled a dozen pages with notes, my handwriting growing increasingly cramped as memories and connections flooded back. I created timelines, documented conversations, mapped out relationships, anything that might help piece together Dean's plan and my defense. When the burner phone rang again, I grabbed it immediately. "Morgan, it's Alicia. I've made some progress. On the legal front. The good news is I've filed an emergency motion challenging the warrant. The bad news is that it will take at least 48 hours before we get a hearing." "So I'm a fugitive for the next 2 days?" "Technically, yes. But remember, they're looking for Morgan Reed, marketing executive, not whoever you need to be right now." She paused. "I've been researching your brother. He's been busy." "What do you mean?" "I pulled his credit report, legally through a subpoena tied to your identity theft claim. In the past 3 months, he's opened 6 new credit accounts, all with excellent limits. He's bought a new car, signed a lease on a waterfront apartment, and made several large purchases from luxury retailers." My stomach tightened. "With my money?" "No, with what appears to be his own newly acquired funds. The timing aligns with when the embezzlement allegedly began. The pieces were falling into place. He needed the money, and he needed someone to blame when it was discovered missing." "Exactly. But here's something interesting. I spoke with Victoria Patel at Meridian." I sat up straighter. "What did she say?" "She's furious about the fraud allegations, not just because of the missing money, but because the account transfers were done using her digital signature authorization. Someone used her credentials to move funds that should have required dual approval." "Dean," I said without hesitation. "He works in IT. He'd have access to administrative credentials." "That's what I was thinking. Victoria's launching her own internal investigation. She's also agreed to provide a statement confirming you were the one who presented the original pitch, not Dean." For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. So we have one witness who can confirm Dean is lying. It's a start, but we need more. I've also been looking into this Dr. Abrams character. The website is definitely fraudulent. The medical license number listed belongs to a real doctor, but one who died 3 years ago. Can we prove Dean created it? Not yet, but I've submitted subpoenas for the domain registration information. If he paid for it with his credit card or used an email address we can tie to him, we'll have him. I closed my eyes, trying to think. What about the apartment? There must be security footage of the day I was locked out. And the storage facility. Someone had to sign for the unit. Good thinking. I'll add those to our subpoena requests. She paused. Morgan, I need to ask you something difficult. Is there any reason Dean would target you specifically? Any history or grudge that would explain this level of calculated destruction? The question hit a nerve I'd been trying to ignore. I thought, back to our childhood, our strained relationship, the countless small betrayals that had accumulated over the years. We've never been close, I said carefully. Our parents divorced when we were teenagers. Dad left, Mom fell apart. Dean was always her favorite, the golden boy who could do no wrong. I was the one who took care of everything, bills, groceries, making sure we didn't lose the house. And Dean. He made promises, big plans. He'd get a scholarship, become a tech mogul, take care of all of us. But when the time came, he dropped out of college after 2 semesters, moved back home, and spent the next few years playing video games in Mom's basement, while I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Then, what happened? I sighed, the memories still raw years later. I finally got my big break, the job at Elevate. It was my ticket out. I moved to the city, started building my own life. Dean stayed behind for another year, then showed up on my doorstep, saying he needed a fresh start. I let him move in, even got him the IT job at Elevate. I thought I was helping him. But you were outshining him, Alicia observed quietly. I guess so. I never thought of it that way. I was just doing what I'd always done, working hard, taking care of business. I paused, a realization forming. But maybe that's exactly what bothered him. I've always been the responsible one, the one who made things happen. Maybe he resented that more than I knew. It's possible. People's resentments can run deeper than we realize. But this goes beyond sibling rivalry. This is calculated, methodical destruction. I thought about Dean's words in the hallway outside HR. I'm taking what should have been mine all along. At the time, I'd been too shocked to fully process the implications. Now, they rang with chilling clarity. He believes he deserves my life, I said slowly. My success, my career, my future. In his mind, he's not stealing. He's reclaiming what should have been his. That's a powerful motive, Alicia agreed. And it might help us anticipate his next moves. After hanging up, I paced the small house, my mind racing. For days, I'd been reacting to Dean's actions, always one step behind, scrambling to survive. That approach had left me homeless, jobless, and now a fugitive. It was time to change strategies. I found a pair of scissors in the kitchen drawer and stood before the bathroom mirror. My auburn hair, the same shade as Dean's, the feature everyone always commented on when noting our resemblance, fell past my shoulders. Without hesitation, I began cutting, watching the locks fall into the sink. When I finished, my hair barely reached my ears, the choppy layers creating a completely different silhouette. Next, I rummaged through the closet in the spare bedroom, finding clothes left behind by Jen's aunt, practical, nondescript items in muted colors, nothing like my usual professional wardrobe. I selected jeans, a faded sweatshirt, and a baseball cap. The transformation wasn't just physical. As I stared at my new reflection, something shifted inside me. I was no longer just running from Dean's destruction. I was stepping into a new identity of my own choosing, one he couldn't touch or manipulate. The burner phone rang again. This time, it was Maria from the shelter. "Alicia asked me to check on you," she said. "Are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Thank you for helping me escape last night." "That's what we do. Listen, there's something else. While the police were searching your room, I overheard one of them mention a storage unit, something about evidence they expected to find there." My heart raced. Storage Unit 27B? I don't know the number, but they seemed confident whatever they were looking for would be there. After thanking her, I immediately called Alicia. "Dean's planted evidence in the storage unit where he put my things," I explained. "The police are planning to search it." "That's not surprising," she replied. "He's been one step ahead at every turn, but this could actually work in our favor." "How?" I asked, confused. "Think about it. If Dean planted evidence, he had to physically access that storage unit. There would be security footage, sign-in logs. We can subpoena those records and prove he was there. But they'll find whatever he planted before we can prove anything." "Maybe not. I can file a motion to seal any evidence recovered until we can challenge its validity." She paused. "Morgan, I think it's time we change our approach. So far, we've been defensive, reacting to each new crisis. We need to go on the offensive." A surge of determination coursed through me. "What did you have in mind?" "Dean thinks he's erased you, your job, your home, your identity. But there's one thing he can't erase: the actual work you did. The clients you interacted with, the presentations you gave, the creative content you developed. Those aren't just memories, they're documented facts." "The Meridian pitch," I said, understanding where she was going. "Victoria Patel remembers me, not Dean." "Exactly. And what about other clients? Other colleagues? Dean may have convinced people at Elevate that you're having a breakdown. But what about industry contacts? Former clients? People who know your work and would recognize the difference between you and your brother?" For the first time in days, I felt energy replacing exhaustion, purpose replacing fear. "I have an idea," I said, thinking of Jason Chen, a former college classmate who now worked at the city newspaper. "What if we turn the spotlight back on Dean, make him the one being scrutinized instead of me?" "That's exactly what I was thinking, but we need to be careful. One wrong move, and you could end up in custody." "I'm tired of being careful," I replied, surprised by the steel in my own voice. "Dean declared war on my life. It's time I fought back." When I hung up, I stared at my reflection again. Short hair, borrowed clothes, eyes bright with new resolve. The woman who looked back at me wasn't the polished marketing executive Dean had tried to erase. She was something new, something forged in the crucible of betrayal and survival. I opened the notebook where I'd been documenting Dean's campaign against me and flipped to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote in bold letters, "Counterattack Plan." My counterattack began with a list of people who knew my work intimately: former clients, industry contacts, college professors who'd mentored me. People whose opinion of me had been formed through direct experience, not through Dean's manipulations. People who could verify that I was who I claimed to be. I couldn't risk using email or social media, which Dean might be monitoring. Instead, I asked Alicia to make the initial contacts, explaining only that I was facing an identity theft situation and needed character witnesses. By late afternoon, she'd secured commitments from 5 people willing to provide statements verifying their professional relationship with the real Morgan Reed. "Victoria Patel has been especially helpful," Alicia reported during our check-in call. "She's provided emails between the two of you discussing the Meridian campaign, exchanges that happened before the alleged embezzlement began. Emails that show your writing style, your strategic thinking, your specific knowledge of their business." Can we prove Dean wasn't the one writing those emails? I asked. Better than that. Some of the emails were sent during in-person meetings. Victoria. Had with you. Unless Dean can be in two places at once, it definitively establishes you as the person she was dealing with. It was a start, but not enough. We needed evidence directly tying Dean to the fraudulent activities. What about the storage unit? I asked. Any luck getting the security footage? We're working on it, but Dean's been clever. The unit was rented in your name, with documents that appear legitimate. We need to prove he was the one who actually accessed it. She paused. There's something else. I've been looking into Dean's background, and there's a pattern you should know about. What kind of pattern? Before he came to work at Elevate, he had 3 other IT jobs, all ending abruptly. I managed to speak confidentially with someone from his last employer. She wouldn't go on record, but she hinted that there had been security concerns, unusual access patterns to financial systems, issues with access credentials. They suspected him of hacking? I asked, the implications dawning on me. They couldn't prove anything, which is why there's no official record. But yes, that's the implication. And here's the interesting part. Each time Dean left a job, there was someone else who took the fall for various issues. A woman at the first company was fired for expense report irregularities. A team lead at the second was pushed out during a restructuring when customer data was compromised. And at the third? A senior manager was investigated for misuse of company resources. He resigned rather than fight it, apparently believing the evidence against him was too strong. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the pattern eerily familiar. Dean didn't just decide to take over my identity on a whim. This is what he does. He sets people up, makes them the fall person for his own activities. That's my assessment. As well. The question is, can we find any of these previous victims and convince them to come forward? I thought about it for a moment. Their first instinct will be to stay away. Going public means reliving the humiliation, potentially damaging their current careers. We need to offer them something in exchange. Like what? Vindication. A chance to clear their names. I paused, an idea forming. What if we approach this as a pattern of behavior? Not isolated incidents, but a documented strategy that Dean has employed multiple times. A serial fraudster, Alicia mused. That changes the narrative considerably, but we'd need at least some of these previous victims to go on record. Let me think about how to approach them, I said. In the meantime, what else do we have? I've been digging into the financial records. According to the documentation Dean provided to the police, you'd been systematically embezzling small amounts from multiple client accounts over several months. The transfers were structured to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts, never more than $9,000 at a time. That's just below the threshold for banking suspicious activity reports, I noted. Exactly. It shows knowledge of banking regulations, knowledge an IT specialist might have, but that would be unusual for a marketing executive. Can we trace where the money went? That's where it gets interesting. The funds were moved through a series of accounts, eventually landing in offshore entities. But there's a weak link in the chain, a domestic account that served as the first transfer point. And guess who opened that account? My pulse quickened. Dean? Close. It was opened with a forged ID in your name, but the phone number associated with the account is Dean's. He used a secondary cell phone registered to a P.O. box, but the carrier records show the account holder is Dean Reed. That's the smoking gun, I said, feeling a surge of hope. It could be. The challenge is getting the evidence in front of the right people before Dean realizes we're onto him. After hanging up, I turned my attention to the issue of the previous victims. If they'd been set up in a similar fashion to me, they'd be reluctant to revisit the experience. But perhaps there was a way to approach them that would appeal to their sense of justice while minimizing their exposure. I flipped to a fresh page in my notebook and drafted a message for Alicia to send on my behalf. Subject: Confidential. Pattern of corporate fraud. I'm representing a client who has been wrongfully accused of financial improprieties at their workplace. During our investigation, we've uncovered evidence of a serial fraudster who has systematically targeted professionals at multiple companies, creating false evidence of misconduct and positioning others to take the blame for their activities. Based on our research, you may have been a target of this individual in the past. While I understand your reluctance to revisit what was likely a painful chapter in your professional life, I believe you may be uniquely positioned to help prevent this person from destroying another career, and possibly to clear your own name in the process. This would begin with a confidential conversation between us. No commitment required beyond that initial discussion. If you're willing to speak with me, please contact me at the number below. It was carefully worded to provide enough information to pique interest without revealing specifics that might alert Dean if the message was shared. Alicia approved the text and promised to send it to the 3 individuals we'd identified as Dean's possible previous targets. While waiting for responses, I focused on another critical element: the digital trail. If Dean had been setting me up for months, he'd have needed access to my accounts, my emails, my files. How had he managed it? I closed my eyes, mentally retracing our shared history in the apartment. Dean had always been the tech guy, the one who set up our Wi-Fi, configured our network, installed security updates on our devices. I'd trusted him implicitly with our digital infrastructure, a trust he'd almost certainly exploited. Had he installed keyloggers on my devices, remote access software? I couldn't be sure, but understanding his methods might reveal additional evidence of his deception. I called Alicia. Again. We need a tech expert, someone who can examine the digital aspects of this case. Dean's an IT specialist. That's his home turf. There must be digital fingerprints we can uncover. I know just the person, she replied. Maya Kapoor, digital forensics consultant. She's worked with me on other cases involving sophisticated tech elements. I'll see if she's available. By early evening, Maya had joined our efforts remotely. After hearing my situation, she asked a series of detailed technical questions about my devices, accounts, and Dean's role in our shared digital environment. Based on what you're describing, he likely had persistent access to your devices and accounts for months, she concluded. The good news is that access leaves traces, logs, unusual connection patterns, unauthorized installations. If we can get access to your devices or account records, I'm confident we can find evidence of his intrusions. But all my devices are either in the storage unit or in Dean's possession, I pointed out. What about cloud backups? Maya asked. Email logs? 2-factor authentication notifications? I thought for a moment. My phone automatically backed up to my Google account, and I had 2-factor authentication enabled on most of my important accounts. Perfect. Those authentication logs would show when someone tried to access your accounts from an unrecognized device. We can subpoena those records from Google, showing access attempts that wouldn't match your normal patterns. For the first time, I saw a clear path to proving Dean's deception. The evidence was there, digital breadcrumbs he couldn't have completely erased, witnesses to my authentic professional identity, financial records showing the money flow, and potentially testimony from previous victims establishing a pattern of behavior. By late evening, we had our first response from one of Dean's previous targets, the senior manager who'd resigned rather than fight the allegations against him. He was willing to talk, but only in person, away from his current workplace. I'll meet with him tomorrow, Alicia promised. If he's willing to go on record about his experience with Dean, it could be pivotal in establishing the pattern. When I finally went to bed that night, exhaustion pulled at me. But it was different from the bone-deep weariness of previous days. This was the productive fatigue of someone who had spent the day fighting back, building something rather than just surviving. On the nightstand beside me lay my notebook, open to a page now filled with names, dates, connection points, and evidence streams, a map of Dean's deception, and my path to reclaiming my life. At the bottom of the page, I'd written a single sentence, a reminder to myself: he took my identity, but he can't take my truth. 2 days into our evidence-gathering campaign, we'd made significant progress. Alicia had met with Robert Alvarez, the senior manager from Dean's previous company, who confirmed a pattern strikingly similar to my situation. Dean had gradually undermined Robert's position, planted evidence of financial improprieties, and then offered to help when the allegations surfaced. By the time Robert realized what was happening, the manufactured evidence against him was so convincing that he chose resignation over a protracted, humiliating investigation. He's willing to provide a sworn statement, Alicia reported. And he's reaching out to the others we identified. Having been through it himself, he knows how to approach them sensitively. Maya, our digital forensics expert, had made breakthroughs as well. She'd secured the authentication logs from my Google account, revealing dozens of suspicious access attempts from unfamiliar IP addresses, access that succeeded despite two-factor authentication. This is actually damning evidence against Dean, Maya explained during our conference call. The only way to bypass two-factor authentication is either to have physical access to your phone or to use sophisticated spyware that intercepts the authentication codes. Given that you lived together, both scenarios point directly to him. Victoria Patel had come through with video recordings of our Meridian pitch meetings, footage that clearly showed me, not Dean, presenting. And our motion to seal the evidence recovered from Storage Unit 27B had been granted, preventing it from being used against me until we could challenge its authenticity. The pieces were falling into place. Now we needed to move quickly before Dean realized how much we'd uncovered. "We have enough to go to the police," Alicia advised. "But I'm concerned about how to approach them. You're still technically a fugitive with an active warrant. Walking into a police station is risky, even with our evidence." "What about the district attorney's office?" I suggested. "Can we take this directly to them?" "It's possible. I have contacts there. But Dean has already positioned you as mentally unstable and financially desperate. We need to be strategic about how we present this case. We decided on a two-pronged approach. First, Alicia would prepare a comprehensive legal brief outlining all our evidence, complete with witness statements, financial records, and digital forensics reports. Second, we would identify a specific prosecutor known for handling complex fraud cases and approach them directly, bypassing the regular channels that Dean might be monitoring. While Alicia worked on the legal strategy, I focused on something equally important: ensuring Dean couldn't simply disappear when he realized his scheme was unraveling. The embezzled funds were likely still accessible to him, and with $200,000 at his disposal, he could easily flee if he suspected we were closing in. "We need to freeze those assets," I told Alicia. "If the money disappears, not only do we lose evidence, but Elevate and its clients suffer permanent damage." She agreed, and began preparing emergency motions to freeze all accounts associated with the fraud. On the morning of the third day, as we were finalizing our approach to the district attorney, Maya called with alarming news. "Someone's been trying to access your Google account overnight. Dozens of attempts using different methods. They're getting more sophisticated and desperate. I think Dean suspects we're gathering evidence." "How could he know?" I asked, a chill running through me. "Hard to say for sure, but if he's monitoring your accounts, he might have noticed the security alerts generated by our records requests. Or someone at the courthouse might have tipped him off about our motions." "We need to move now," I said, a sense of urgency overtaking me. "If he realizes we're building a case, he'll either run or try to destroy evidence," Alicia agreed. "I'll contact the prosecutor immediately. In the meantime, stay where you are. You're still safer if Dean doesn't. Know your location." Hours later, Alicia called back, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Assistant District Attorney Samira Hayes has agreed to meet us this afternoon. She's reviewing our briefing now and seems genuinely interested in the pattern we've established. She's also issued a temporary freeze on the accounts we identified. Us? I repeated. She wants to meet me? Yes. She needs to hear your side directly. But don't worry. She's agreed to meet at a neutral location, not her office, to minimize your risk. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. at a private conference room in the downtown library. Public enough to be safe, private enough for sensitive discussions. I disguised myself as thoroughly as possible, wrapping a scarf around my short hair and wearing large sunglasses. Ada Hayes was a formidable woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. She listened intently as I described Dean's systematic campaign against me, occasionally referencing the detailed brief Alicia had prepared. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, considering. This is one of the most comprehensive identity fraud cases I've seen, she said finally. The pattern evidence is particularly compelling. What concerns me is the embezzlement aspect. $200,000 is missing, and we need to determine where it went. Dean has it, I said without hesitation. His sudden lifestyle upgrades coincide perfectly with the timing of the transfers. I agree that's likely, she nodded. But proving it requires financial evidence tying him directly to those funds. We've traced part of it to the intermediary account with his phone number, Alicia reminded her. That's a start, but not conclusive. We need more. She turned to me. Ms. Reed, what do you think is your brother's next move, now that the accounts are frozen? I considered the question carefully. Dean always has a backup plan. If he can't access the money, he'll focus on making sure I can't clear my name. He'll either try to destroy remaining evidence or create new evidence against me. Or both, Ada Hayes added grimly, which gives us an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? I asked, to catch him in the act. She leaned forward. If Dean believes you're still hiding, still afraid, he might get careless. What if we let him think he's winning, then document his next move? You want to use me as bait, I said, understanding her strategy immediately. Not exactly. We want to create a situation where Dean reveals his true intentions, where he thinks he's dealing the final blow to your credibility, but instead exposes himself. The plan that emerged was both elegant and risky. We would leak information suggesting I was planning to turn myself in and provide evidence clearing my name. The leak would be structured to reach Dean through channels he would trust. Perhaps through Lynette in HR or another colleague at Elevate. If Dean believes you're about to exonerate yourself, he'll make a move to prevent it, Ada Hayes explained. We'll be watching and waiting. And if he doesn't take the bait, I asked, then we proceed with the case we've built so far. It's already substantial. But if he does react, we'll have him demonstrating intent in real time. As we were finalizing, the details? Alicia's phone buzzed. She checked the message, her expression darkening. What is it? I asked. Maya says there's unusual activity on Elevate's network. Someone's accessing employee files, including yours, and transferring large data packets to an external server. Dean, I said immediately. He's covering his tracks, destroying potential evidence. Ada Hayes made a quick call, speaking in clipped, authoritative sentences. When she hung up, she turned to us. I've dispatched digital crimes officers to Elevate. Immediately. If your brother is tampering with evidence, we'll catch him in the act. I need to be there, I said, standing up. Absolutely not, Alicia countered. It's too dangerous. It's the perfect opportunity, I insisted. Dean won't expect me to show up at Elevate. Everyone there thinks I'm either mentally unstable or a fugitive thief. If I walk in now, with law enforcement present, Dean will be caught completely off guard. Ada Hayes considered this. She has a point. Sometimes the most effective confrontation is the one the perpetrator isn't expecting. It's too risky, Alicia repeated. Dean has manipulated everyone at that company. They might try to detain her before the officers can explain the situation. Not if I have official protection, I countered, looking at Ada Hayes. I need to face Dean directly, not just for the case, but for myself. He's spent months planning my destruction. I want him to see that he failed. After a lengthy debate, we reached a compromise. I would go to Elevate, but only with Aita Hayes personally accompanying me, along with 2 officers from the Digital Crimes Unit. We would enter after they had secured the premises and identified Dean's location within the building. As we drove to Elevate offices, I felt a strange calm settling over me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was moving toward Dean, not running away. The powerlessness that had defined the past week was transforming into something else: determination, resolve, even a certain ruthless clarity. We parked a block from the building, waiting for confirmation that the Digital Crimes Unit had entered and located Dean. When the call came, Aita Hayes turned to me. He's in the server room, actively deleting files. The officers are monitoring but haven't approached him yet. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? I removed my sunglasses and scarf, sitting up straighter. I've never been more certain of anything. As we walked into the lobby of Elevate Marketing, I felt eyes turning toward me, confused, suspicious, uncertain. The security guard reached for his phone, but Aita Hayes quickly presented her credentials, explaining the situation. In brief, authoritative terms, we were escorted to the elevator and taken to the floor housing the IT department. The digital crimes officers met us in the hallway, speaking in hushed tones. He's still in there, systematically wiping directories related to client accounts and employee records. We've been documenting everything remotely without alerting him. Is there only one entrance to the server room? Aita Hayes asked. Yes, we have it covered. Good. She turned to me. Remember, your only role is to be present. Let us handle the arrest and evidence collection. I nodded, my heart pounding as we approached the server room. Through the glass door, I could see Dean's back as he worked intently at a terminal, completely unaware of our presence. Aita Hayes motioned for an officer to open the door, then stepped inside, her voice cutting through the hum of the servers. Dean Reed? I'm Assistant District Attorney Hayes. Step away from the terminal, please. He froze, then slowly turned, his expression shifting from shock to calculation in an instant. Then his eyes found mine, standing just behind the prosecutor, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, then anger, then a strange, cold amusement. Morgan, he said, his voice eerily calm. I was wondering when you'd stop hiding. I'm not the one who's been hiding, Dean, I replied, maintaining my distance as the officers moved to secure him. I've just been gathering evidence. His eyes narrowed, assessing the situation with the calculating precision I'd once admired in him. Evidence of what? Your own embezzlement? Your mental breakdown? I have documentation for both. Manufactured. Documentation, Aita Hayes interjected. Mr. Reed, we have substantial evidence linking you to fraudulent financial transactions, identity theft, and now tampering with digital evidence. I'm placing you under arrest. As an officer read him his rights, Dean maintained unwavering eye contact with me, his expression a mixture of defiance and something else, perhaps grudging respect that I'd managed to turn the tables on him. You won't make these charges stick, he said calmly as they handcuffed him. It's my word against hers, and I have an entire company that will vouch for my character. Actually, Maya stepped into the room, laptop in hand. We've been monitoring your activities on the company server for the past hour. You've systematically deleted files related to client accounts and specifically targeted records that would establish Morgan's work history and credentials. That's destruction of evidence, and we've documented every keystroke. Dean's confident demeanor faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. I was performing routine system maintenance. Ask anyone in IT. It's standard procedure. At 4 p.m. on Saturday, a workday, without any scheduled downtime or notification to users? Maya shook her head. That's not how enterprise systems are maintained. As they led Dean away, he turned to me one last time. This isn't over, Morgan. You think you've won, but you have no idea what I've set in motion. His words sent a chill through me, but I refused to show it. It is over, Dean. You just don't realize it yet. The next days passed in a whirlwind of statements, evidence processing, and legal maneuvers. The warrant for my arrest was formally withdrawn, though clearing my name completely would take more time. Elevate placed me on paid administrative leave, pending a full investigation, which was better than being fired but still left my professional future uncertain. The evidence against Dean proved overwhelming. Maya's digital forensics team recovered fragments of the deleted files, including backdated documents that established my history of mental instability and financial irregularities. The authentication logs showed consistent unauthorized access to my accounts from Dean's devices. Bank records confirmed his connection to the fraudulent accounts where embezzled funds had been temporarily held. Most damning of all, Robert Alvarez and one other former colleague of Dean's came forward, describing in detail how he had systematically undermined them and fabricated evidence of misconduct at their previous companies. The pattern was unmistakable, and the prosecution built a compelling case around it. 2 weeks after Dean's arrest, I met with Victoria Patel at Meridian Tech. Despite everything that had happened, maintaining their business relationship with Elevate was a priority for both companies. I knew something was off the moment your brother took over the account, Victoria confided. The difference in presentation style, the lack of familiarity with key details we'd previously discussed, it didn't add up. I appreciate your willingness to speak up, I told her. Not everyone would have taken that risk. Integrity matters in business relationships, she replied simply. I hope you'll be returning to manage our account once this is all settled. I'd like that, I said, though uncertainty still clouded my future. But there's considerable damage to repair. Not as much as you might think. Marcus has been more forthcoming since Dean's arrest. He admits he had doubts about the situation but was persuaded by the seemingly overwhelming evidence against you. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. A month after his arrest, Dean agreed to a plea deal, 10 years for embezzlement, fraud, and identity theft, with the possibility of parole after 7. In exchange, he provided detailed information about where the stolen funds had been transferred, allowing Elevate to recover nearly $180,000 of the missing money. I attended his sentencing hearing, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. When given the opportunity to speak, Dean turned to face me directly. I want to apologize to my sister, he said, his voice steady. Not for what I did. I still believe I deserved that position more than she did. I'm sorry only that I failed to execute my plan perfectly. The judge was not impressed. Mr. Reed, your apology demonstrates a disturbing lack of remorse and a profound sense of entitlement. This court sentences you to the maximum terms allowed by your plea agreement, to be served consecutively. As they led him away, Dean looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in his expression, only a cold acknowledgement that in this particular game, I had outplayed him. Rebuilding my life wasn't easy. Though legally cleared, the whispers and sidelong glances at Elevate made returning to work there impossible. My apartment had been rented to new tenants, and most of my possessions from the storage unit had been seized as evidence, many items damaged or lost in the process. But there were unexpected silver linings. Victoria Patel offered me a position at Meridian Tech, heading their in-house marketing department, a significant promotion from my role at Elevate. Robert Alvarez, whose career had been similarly derailed by Dean years earlier, became a mentor and friend, helping me navigate the complex emotions that followed the ordeal. 6 months after Dean's sentencing, I sat in my new office at Meridian, looking out over the city skyline. On my desk sat a small potted plant, a gift from Alicia, with a card that read simply, "New Growth." Beside it was a framed quote I'd written on that first night at Jen's aunt's house. He took my identity But he can't take my truth. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, our relationship cautiously rebuilding after her initial belief in Dean's lies. She was coming to visit next month, her first trip to see me since the trial. It would be awkward, painful even, but necessary. Some relationships are worth fighting to reclaim. Others, like my bond with Dean, are better left severed. That evening, as I left the office, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished elevator doors. Short hair now styled. Deliberately rather than hastily cut. Professional attire chosen with care, shoulders straight, eyes clear. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same person who had stood helplessly outside a locked apartment door all those months ago. I had lost my home, my job, my reputation, nearly my freedom. But in fighting to reclaim them, I had discovered something more valuable, an unshakable confidence in my own resilience. Dean had tried to erase me, to replace me with his own narrative. He had weaponized my trust, exploited my kindness, and nearly destroyed everything I'd built. But in the end, he had failed in the most fundamental way. He couldn't erase who I truly was, not from the world, and not from myself. As I stepped out into the evening air, I thought about identity. How fragile it can seem when documents and records are altered, when friends and colleagues are turned against you. But how ultimately, it's defined not by external validation, but by the truth you carry within. Dean had stolen my credentials, my accounts, my professional persona. But he could never steal my essence. I had fought back and reclaimed my life. Different now, scarred perhaps, but unquestionably mine. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.